Some cars are fast. Some cars are stylish. Some cars are packed with features that look impressive for about 5 minutes. And then there are the cars that simply refuse to die. That is what this video is about. Because if there is one thing the Volkswagen Auto Group has done incredibly well over the years, it is building a few machines that seem almost impossible to kill. Cars that survive brutal mileage, bad roads, neglected owners, questionable service history, and somehow still keep going like nothing happened. The kind of cars that make you wonder whether the engine will outlast the body, the suspension, and maybe even the person driving it. In today's video, we are looking at 3 VAG cars that will outlive their owners. These are not the flashiest cars ever made. They are not the most exciting to brag about. But when it comes to long-term toughness, mechanical honesty, and pure survival, these machines built a reputation that is almost legendary. So if you want a car that can take abuse, stack up huge miles, and keep showing up year after year, this list is for you. Let's get into it. 3. Skoda Octavia Mk, one of the most underrated survivors in the entire VAG family. At first glance, this may not look like the kind of car that earns a title like this. It is simple, practical, and about as understated as it gets, but that is exactly part of the reason it became so durable. The first generation Octavia came from a period when VAG was still building straightforward, honest cars with proven mechanical parts, sensible engineering, and just enough comfort to make everyday life easy. And when that formula is done right, the result can last forever. The Octavia Mk1 earned its reputation by doing the boring things extremely well. It started in the morning, it handled long commutes, it swallowed luggage, it survived rough roads. It kept working for families, taxi drivers, delivery use, and just about anyone who needed a car that would not quit. And over time, that reliability became its identity. This is one of those cars people rarely dream about, but often remember with enormous respect. Why? Because they just keep going. And that matters more than style when you are talking about true long-term durability. Another reason the Octavia deserves a place here is because it used proven VAG hardware in a simple, no-nonsense package. That combination made it tough, not glamorous. It was the sort of car that could take mileage most modern cars would hate and still come back for more. And that is why it belongs on this list. The Skoda Octavia Mk1 is not trying to impress anybody. It just wants to survive longer than everything around it, and very often, that is exactly what it does. 2. Volkswagen Passat B 5.5. A car that for many people defines the phrase built to last. This was one of those Volkswagens that seemed to be everywhere for a reason. Families had them. Company fleets had them. Taxi drivers trusted them. People put huge miles on them, loaded them with luggage, drove them across countries, and just kept asking for more. And somehow, a lot of them answered that challenge without much drama. That is not an accident. The Passat B 5.5 came from an era when Volkswagen still knew how to make a mainstream car feel mature, solid, and properly engineered. It had that heavy German highway feel, a cabin that felt more expensive than it needed to be, and the sort of road manners that made it feel like a serious car even when it was doing very ordinary work. But the real reason this car is here is because of its durability reputation. In the right version, the Passat B 5.5 became one of those cars people trusted with massive mileage. The kind of car that gets bought, driven hard, sold, driven harder, neglected, revived, and somehow still refuses to disappear. That kind of survival is exactly what earns a car legendary status among used car buyers. And let's be honest, not every durable car feels worth saving. The Passat did. That is what made it special. It was comfortable enough to enjoy, practical enough to live with, and tough enough to justify keeping on the road far longer than most people expected. Even today, when you see one still running cleanly, there is almost something satisfying about it. It is proof that some cars were built for the long haul, not just the warranty period. The Passat B 5.5 may not be exciting in the traditional enthusiast sense, but in the world of real-world endurance, it is one of the strongest names VAG ever produced. 1. Volkswagen Golf Mk. And honestly, this one almost feels inevitable. Because when people talk about VAG cars that refuse to die, the Golf Mk is one of the first names that always comes up. This car became legendary not because it was flashy or rare, but because it simply lasted. It survived everything. Huge mileage, careless owners, cold starts, city traffic, rough daily use, years of neglect, and somehow, it kept finding a way to stay alive. That is exactly why it takes number 1. The Mk4 Golf came from one of those sweet spots in automotive history, where cars were modern enough to feel usable, but simple enough to remain durable. It had solid build quality, a mature design, and the kind of straightforward engineering that tends to age much better than overly complicated new cars. And over time, that made it almost unkillable in the public imagination. What really helped the Golf Mk was its versatility. It worked for almost everyone. Young drivers bought them, families used them, commuters relied on them. They were modified, abused, ignored, repaired cheaply, and passed from owner to owner like they could live forever. And the crazy part is that many of them almost did. That is when you know a car has crossed into legend. Because this is no longer just about being reliable. Plenty of cars are reliable for a while. The Golf Mk4 built a reputation for surviving long after logic said it should have been gone. It became one of those cars people joke about because the joke feels true. You do not own a Golf Mk4. You merely borrow it before it moves on to the next owner. And that is why it deserves the top spot. The Volkswagen Golf Mk4 is the kind of VAG car that seems bigger than its own spec sheet. It represents an entire era of solid, durable, everyday German engineering. It is simple, tough, and incredibly hard to kill. In other words, exactly what this list is all about. Conclusion. So in the end, if you want a VAG car that feels like it could outlive just about anything, these three are some of the strongest names you can choose. The Skoda Octavia Mk earned its place through simplicity and honesty. The Volkswagen Passat B 5.5 proved that a practical family car can also be incredibly tough. And the Volkswagen Golf Mk4 became the ultimate symbol of a car that just refuses to disappear. What makes these cars special is not that they were perfect, it is that they were durable in a very real, old-school way. They were built to work, built to take mileage, and built to stay useful long after many newer cars would already be finished. Of course, even the toughest car can be destroyed by neglect. Condition still matters, maintenance still matters, but if you are talking about VAG machines with a genuine reputation for surviving almost anything, these three absolutely belong in the conversation. Now, I want to know what you think. Which VAG car do you trust the most? And is there another one that should have made this list? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to AutoScope for more content about reliable German cars, legendary engines, and the best used cars still worth buying today.